last night we got on a panel. Now, I'll admit, panel dynamics can sometimes get folks a little worked up.
What does it have to do with the morality of how to deal with a country after you took out their leader?
Wait, it is relevant, but do you really, after you just got dog walked on the relevance point before, do you really want to question me on that? And do you want to waste all of our time with your stupid interjections?
I always ask in good faith. You rely on filibustering and Gishgallop to overwhelm the time and avoid resolving core questions.
Right.
So we're going off in some really strange directions here.
Well, this is where you took it, right? You took it here. Agreed. The two examples you provided so far. The two examples you brought up so far have been your examples, correct? And to be clear, you didn't point to a single example of that in the conversations. The ones that we've gone through. That is to say, the lactoid example. You said that was good faith. You said, so just to be clear, the one about the question, asking the question itself. You said that was fine and not bad faith at all. And then you weren't meaningfully willing to engage on the notion that I prevented you. Wait, I just want to finish. That I prevented you. Hey folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description. Here we go. Hey folks, how are you doing?
How are you?
Welcome everybody. You're live right now, heads up.
That's wonderful.
Awesome. Well,
are we showing faces?
I think
you're not showing faces.
You can. I think people will want to see you. So, but I am just quickly showing, before I show your face, I want to just make sure that because I do want to, agree that the prompt I have written out here is the correct prompt, which is Pisco relies on extended filibustering, Gishgallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions. That's the debate prompt, right?
I believe so. I only heard like the last half of that sentence. I think you cut out for just a second.
All right. So let me just repeat it one more time so we have total agreement. The prompt is the proposition that you're supporting. Pisco relies on extending filibuster, Gishgallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions.
Yes, 100% correct.
Okay, that is the correct prompt. And so just let me pop you so you can see me and then people can see you. Just 1 second. And why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Okay, well, my name's Josh, computer engineer, startup guy. I live in Las Vegas. It's awesome. It's only where the cool people live. Because here's the cool thing about Vegas. Almost everybody comes to Vegas. And even if you don't come to Vegas, it's one of few towns on the planet everybody knows.
It's a cool town. I've been there. It's pretty hot sometimes. But, I actually really like my time in Vegas.
Oh, it's hot as hell, man. There's 2 months out of the year I don't like hanging out too much.
And
everybody comes to Vegas.
So I appreciate you coming in, just transitioning, so people are going to be able to see you in just a second. 3, 2, 1, go. And with us as well as, sorry, give me again your given name. Do you prefer that I call you that name or StreamRift?
StreamRift is going to be easier.
Okay.
My name's Josh Stacy. I don't hide behind it. I don't care, but so you can call me Josh or StreamRift. Either one's just fine.
Awesome. And with us as well is a moderator from the community and who also, I believe you have your own podcast, Gilmore. So Gilmore, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Gilmore. I was dragged in to moderate this conversation between the two of you. I do have my own show, The Gundam and Gilmore Show, available on YouTube and Spotify and other apps. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So, so the first thing maybe we should do is, well, either I can give you the time to lay out what your claim is here, StreamRift, or I could tell you what I understand this to be, what the claim means.
Let's start with just the very exact words, and then we'd had it in chat, and I'm going to type it out so that way it's on my screen. Okay. But the claim is essentially you Gishgallop and you filibuster to avoid actually engaging with things. That's the essence of it. But if you have the exact words up, go ahead.
Yeah,
give them to me. I'll write them. I'd love to hear what you think.
So it's like a sentence fragment, but I still understand it. So Pisco relies on extending filibustering, Gishgallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions, and I assume it's and to avoid resolving core questions, right? So to overwhelm time and also to avoid resolving core questions, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. And so I understand, you can tell me, I can give you my interpretation of this, of what it means, not taking a view on it, but just to make sure that we agree on what it means.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to contextualize it just a little bit too. This will just take 30, 60 seconds. Last night we got on a panel. Now I'll admit panel dynamics can sometimes get folks a little worked up. Maybe sometimes we get a little more amped up, but that's where this is coming from. I feel like this is a perfect explanation of what happened last night. So go ahead. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So the way I understand this is either that I did this on one instance, or that I did it in that I have a tendency to do it. And I would understand like Pisco relies on this, that the fact that it's sort of stated in a present tense to be kind of a judgment of how I tend to approach issues. Not that I always do it, but that I tend to do it, that this is a tactic that I rely on with regularity, right? And so it wouldn't be enough to just show that I did it in one time. It would be, you'd have to show that like, this is the kind of thing I do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't just saying Pisco one night was this way.
Okay.
He relies on this. This is a part of the structure of the way he interacts with discussion.
Cool. So I disagree with that proposition. I think it's
really
false. Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Well, do you want me to give you my affirmative case of why I think it's false, or do you want to give your case for why you think it's true?
Well, so I'll go this way. I think in good faith discussion, which so far it sounds like we're in, it's incumbent on both sides or all of the sides, if there's more than one, to actually try to understand each other. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I understand you're an attorney. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you a practicing litigator?
I was. I mean, I'm not in practice right now, but I plan to take some cases in the, the new year.
Right. So fundamentally,
I left my
your
firm.
arguments. Okay, and just side note, impressive. Congrats on passing the bar, being an attorney. That's all. That's not something that just idiots get. So credit.
I think that people overstate the importance.
Yeah, that's debatable.
Degrees.
All right. I'm trying to be nice.
Passing the bar is like a minimum competency threshold. It's not that impressive, to be honest. In my opinion, Gilmore. I don't know if you agree with that or disagree.
Yeah, I agree, but besides the point.
All right. Well, so the fact of the matter is, at the state court level, a lot of times you've got trial attorneys strategies, where a lot of times it's narrative, just push, tell a story, paint the version of facts you want, and don't let the other side speak. And on the other end of that, we take a look at maybe appellate law, and it's more about the actual rules of procedure and making sure that things did happen properly. And I think that you very squarely would fit very well in narrative law, and that based off of last night, supported by the fact that it doesn't sound like from the chat, from the comments, anybody was surprised that this was, I mean, I heard the phrase Pisco was being Pisco. I'm assuming that's coming from somewhere. And so I don't think it's an isolated incident. The fact of the matter is you do have a reputation. Again, hats off to you on that. You've gone out and you've gotten a lot of attention, but a lot of the attention is, and I'll say this, it sounds like it's been happening, escalating more recently. That's what sort of the herd seems to think. Do you think you've been steady Eddie the whole time? Or if not, what's your affirmative case for how you're good faith and how you don't Gishgallop and how you don't run the clock?
Well, I have an affirmative view on the proposition of the debate, which is that is negative. That is, I don't rely on extending filibusters, and I don't use Gishgallop tactics for the purpose of overwhelming time and resolving core questions. That's my view on it. We can talk about something else if you want to. A lot of your framing there I disagree with, but I think it's kind of tangential. Like you're, splitting up between like narrativizing of trial versus narrativizing and appealing. I think it's an oversimplification. I think both, both appellate lawyers and trial lawyers, or even litigators, and like in all aspects, are telling stories. And I think that the bifurcation that you've
that's
offered
not what the pleadings say.
What's that?
That's not what the pleadings say. That's not what the pleadings say. If you read appellate pleadings, they read different than, for example, the most extreme example would be like a family court. But even if you just do a state court, civil court, a nice, like a circuit court, civil docket, in state courts, it's a lot more theatrical. It's a lot more narratives. It's a lot more adjectives. When you get in the district court, temperature simmers down. When you get to appellate law, it simmers down even more. Not to say there aren't, narrative attorneys at the appellate level, but generally speaking, for example, most circuits aren't going to put up with that sort of antics that you see at the trial level.
Yeah, I guess I don't agree with your characterization of what lawyers tend to do either at the appellate level or at the trial level. I think that that's not true, your distillation there, but I think it's tangential to the topic. But I just want to signal that, I kind of want to stay on topic, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great. Run at it.
So my view, and you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
You haven't. I believe I've laid out my case. Go ahead and make your case.
Well, hang on, because I don't think that you actually supported the case. I think you've just said,
okay, so here's
some
my
people
foundation.
said Pisco being Pisco. That doesn't prove your case that Pisco relies on extended filibuster and Gishgallop tactics to overwhelm time, avoid resolving core questions. So you haven't provided a case yet, in my opinion.
Okay. So here's the evidence. You might reject it. You might say it's insufficient. Here's the evidence for the claim. One, last night I was on a panel with you, and you know Admiral Gibbs has a hard time shutting up. Real hard time shutting up. He showed up. He hadn't said shit. And you kept yapping and yapping and yapping. And I said, I'm not going to say anything till Admiral Gibbs gets to say something. And for 20, 30 minutes, you keep yapping and yapping and yapping. Gibbs couldn't get much in. Then the support. So that's data point one. And data point two is your general reputation and the reactions from any of the circles I've seen where folks have been discussing this that are familiar with you and in the environments that you've been in like this. So you can reject that. You can say that's not enough evidence, and that's fine. I don't have much more evidence than that. That's the data point. Go ahead.
So on one, let me do it in reverse order, the reputation point. I think I have the opposite reputation. I have the reputation not for Gishgalloping, but overtly, I think it's a false reputation. I don't think it's true, but like overly simplifying and doing things in yes or no and like making the question as direct as possible. That's like the opposite of a Gishgallop. That people will say, oh, you're not allowing for people to expand on their answers, and you're not allowing for people to, for the conversation to be more fluid. So I don't think I have a reputation for Gishgalloping. I think I have, if anything, the reputation for the opposite, which again I reject.
That's filibustering.
As for but a filibuster presuppose, I think you would agree with this, some desire, some intention to like run out the clock, and that is also part of your answer there. But that isn't my reputation. My reputation is that I will, because we're looking at the reputation part, I will spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours going into particular issues and leaving my open chats, open VCs, and we'll have like endless conversation about a given topic. And that again is the opposite of trying to overwhelm time and avoid resolving core questions. I have a reputation for exhaustively going on a topic and entertaining all people who will ask all sorts of questions. So I think your reputational argument is not just like wrong reading, it's like literally the opposite.
Well, so like last night, for example, I thought one of the stupid and bad faith things that you did was you said, assuming it's unconstitutional, would you support this? And I rejected the premise. I answered it anyway. And you didn't listen to any explanation about why, even if it was unconstitutional, I would have supported it. And the problem, back to the filibustering here, is I have no doubt that you go real deep, and Lactoid even was commenting on how you'll hyperfixate on things. And I'm not going to dogpile him on this, but just using that as a data point on hyperfixation, I believe you think certain points are important and you spend a lot of time on them. But when you deliver for 5 minutes of backstory, then you offer a yes, no question, then you don't allow any elaboration. That is running the clock and not letting the other side speak. It's not letting the arguments do the work. It's controlling the frame.
Yeah, so I'm not
Which
sure.
Is what narrative what lawyers are meant to do, and that's why we have rules of procedure. So this way, there's reasonable pushback in an adversarial system. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure. Are you suggesting that by me trying to get clear and direct answers from Lactoid and saying yes or no, and then when he says let me expand further, then I let him expand further? That is, I did. So the moment you're talking about, I say yes or no. He says yes, and then I try to go on. He's like, well, let me explain. I stop and then let him explain further. I'm just going to ask you straight up. That is, I'm just telling you and representing that is what occurred. And my question for you is that example of good faith or bad faith, or neither?
That's an example of good faith.
Okay,
and
so
if you were more like
what you
that,
just pointed to,
what
you just pointed to wasn't an example of bad faith. You just said by your own words that was an example of good faith.
All right, I'll tell you what you're doing here.
Okay,
you find one exception that does not disprove the theme. You latch onto that. You've got a great trial attorney mind. I think you'd do fabulous in court. Have no doubt on that. The question isn't whether or not sometimes you're good faith. I'm willing to say sometimes you're a good faith. Now, if Lactoid wasn't, well, let's separate the Lactoid part out of it, though. So
that's the example you brought up, though.
Normally do that with people?
That's yes.
Do you think you normally do that with people?
Yes, and that is the example you brought up.
Okay,
yes.
So last night when I explicitly said, there was a point relatively early on, I said, can I just have 15 seconds? And you went on for at least 10 minutes. What was unreasonable about my ask for 15 seconds to ask you a question to actually head in a direction that might have been perhaps more interesting or useful?
I don't think I can answer the question because it's a false premise. The false premise being,
okay, I'll find the clip later.
That you asked for 15 seconds and I took 10 minutes speaking time, which is
5 to 10. But I'll grab the clip.
Do you really think that I spoke for 5 minutes uninterrupted at any point in that discussion?
Pretty much. Oh yeah.
Do you actually?
You did a great job of holding them. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And do you
like,
remember?
Do you want me to do like a deep retrospective on this, or are you just fucking with me? Because I don't like taking the bait.
No,
if you genuinely
I
believe
think
this,
it's such.
You're cutting me off now.
Wait, one second. So if we're going to discuss how long the actual monologue was, if you want to describe it that way from Pisco, you can find the clip and play. It's not worth, guessing how long it was one way or the other. We could have a definitive answer on that. So
yeah. So let's find the clip.
So the clip is from last night. I don't know the timestamp.
Do you remember what the thing was about that you're saying is bad faith? Right? You're making the claim this is an example of bad faith. So I want to know what it's generally about, if you remember.
No, the claim is that you rely on filibustering and Gishgallop to overwhelm the time and avoid resolving core questions.
Right.
So we're going off in some really strange directions here.
Well, this is where you took it, right? You took it here. Agreed. The two examples you provided so far. The two examples you brought up so far have been your examples, correct? So the first one was the lactoid example, where you said that's an example of good faith. Actually, there's nothing wrong with that. And the second one was this one where you're claiming that I spoke at length when you just asked.
Well, you don't normally do that. That's what you smuggled in.
Well,
you smuggled in the claim.
You haven't made that. You haven't shown that. It's my claim that I do give room when people want to expand their answers to say further than yes or no. I do. That's my claim, and you're saying you don't, and I'm like, okay, well, what's the justification for that? And then you moved off, and now you're talking about the amount of time. So both of these, you're saying we're going into a weird area.
So I just asked
these
you
are the examples you brought
and made a specific point, and you're doing the monologue run over. So here's the thing: you brought up one example in that discussion where I believe you were behaving in that narrow fashion in good faith.
No, you brought that up.
I gave you that.
You brought that up.
And as a result,
you brought that case up. I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
You're putting me up now. As a result of me giving you a valid point for free, because I am good faith here. You say, well, if I did that once, then it means I'm always good faith, is what you imply.
No, that's not what I said. No, that's
in there.
Sorry. No, that's
smuggled an argument.
Wait. I just want to appeal to the moderator. A, who brought up the example of lactoid that you heard, moderator? And B, did I make the claim that because I acted once in good faith, that therefore I'm always good faith? I don't think I made that claim. Or did you hear that, Gilmore?
Yeah, so Streamriff definitely brought up the lactoid point first. My understanding of what your response was that he brought up the lactoid point. You were saying that's an example of me being in good faith, and that's kind of where we left it at. You didn't say you were always in good faith because of that one example. You just say the one example he brought up was an example of you being in good faith.
Yeah, I think that's right. You disagree with that, Streamriff?
So we'll use that as our shared space right now. You brought up that's one example. If I was gonna,
let's not focus. How about this? I think it's to streamline it. Bring up different examples of him being in bad faith, and then we can go from there.
All right, sure. I'll give you an example. Pisco, would you agree that when you're arguing, you like to lay out your case, ask a yes/no question, and then just keep running with it? Do you agree that that's your style, or not so much?
Not so much, because I think that I should do that more.
Okay.
I think that oftentimes I just start Socratically, and I don't lay out my full structure before I get into the questions. I just go right into the Socratic stuff. And so I think that sometimes when I don't
think you're Socratic at all, or you don't have any comprehension of what that actually means.
So which claim do you want to deal with first? One, that I'm not Socratic, or two, that Socratic. I don't know? Okay, so I just want to deal with the claims first. So A, do you want me to deal with your contention that I am not Socratic, or B, that I don't know what being Socratic means? Which of those do you want me to address first?
B.
Okay, so I understand Socratic to be engaging in a dialectic of questions, asking questions to get to underlying truth. And the Socratic method is one that's often used in law school to try to get to a shared understanding by asking questions that lead to certain places, like Socrates used to do. That's my understanding of Socratic. Do you think that that's a off-base understanding of Socratic?
Let's shade it in more. In the Socratic
wait. Can I just get you to answer that first? So do you think that?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good definition. No. So one of the things that I try to do, which I view as good faith, maybe it's not, is instead of trying to categorically reject everything you just said, find the shared space in what you said and build on it. But Socratic teaching, we're having someone say, "Hi, if I'm teaching you Pisco," and I know I should know this. Is it Pisco, something else? Pisco. Okay, I apologize. So, Pisco, if I say, I'm going to teach you in a Socratic way, most of the time I'm asking a questions to encourage your thought and have you be speaking. So if you're using the Socratic method, you're largely leaning more towards you're controlling the dialogue and asking a question. And the only overlap I really see is you do ask some questions. Technically, I don't think you lean into the method itself.
So the question first is whether wait. Sorry. The question you asked. I gave you two choices, A or B. Is whether I employ the Socratic method, or B, whether I understand the Socratic method. I asked you which you want to address first, and you said B, whether I understand it. And what you've just provided just now is an example of how I'm not applying the Socratic method, but you haven't made the case that my understanding of it is incorrect.
Okay. So what you described is not the Socratic method.
Okay. In virtue of what is it not the Socratic method?
So I'm going to use the Socratic method with you to explain the Socratic method if you'll consent. Do you consent?
No, I don't want a question. I want answers.
Okay. So if you're using the Socratic method, you're asking probing questions to get the other side to think. You're not for shoving the narrative at them. That's a core difference. It's an inversive relationship to what you do.
So what
it's
about?
Fine. I'm not saying everybody has to go Socratic, but you're out of.
What about what I said when you asked me when I tried to explain what I understood the Socratic method to be does not map onto what you said? Asking questions to get to share truth.
It goes to the intent and the rhythm of it. See, like right now, I think you're being pedantic for the sake of mental masturbation. I don't think we're actually trying to come to a shared understanding.
Do you think it's bad faith? So you accuse me of not understanding a term, Socratic. It seems like, in sum and substance, our understandings of that term largely align. It's a way to get to truth via
categorically they don't. Let me ask you this: can you steel man my version of it?
I honestly cannot, because I'm trying.
Why is that?
I think it's because I think that we are aligned on the meaning of the term Socratic by and large. And so, given that I think that we are aligned,
you created a definition that you believe you can defend, and so this is what I'm going to say: a particular tier of argument style where you force a definition and make sure the other side has to stay on that definition. Problem here is your definition is foundationally flawed. It's at its core.
I'm asking for the case for
Socratic
that. Wait, no. So I'm asking for your case.
The defining hallmark of a Socratic method is asking questions to encourage the other side to think and reconcile the conflicts on their own. The goal is to walk through it with them.
What's the justification
and
for that?
have them internalize?
What's the justification for that claim?
What do you mean? Try that again in English.
Yeah. What is the justification for the claim that the central element to the Socratic method is what you just described there?
Because that's the core of how the learning process works under a Socratic method.
That's just repeating the claim. I'm asking for a justification for the claim.
How would you mean?
So I understand when we're trying to get to words' meanings, people will sort of tend to point to things that would elicit the usage of the term and the concepts, how it's being used by certain situations or certain people. So, for example, people will point to dictionaries or will point to.
Do you believe in absolute truth?
I don't know what that means.
So some people believe in a subjective truth or a my truth, right? 8 billion people on the planet, 8 billion truths. Other people believe there's one truth, things are the way they are, and there's one absolute truth. So, do you understand that definition of absolute truth?
I don't understand that you just provided one. You just said that some people believe in it, but it didn't explain what absolute truth is.
So do you know what truth is?
I understand truth to be something that coheres with reality.
Okay, so absolute truth would be the absolute extension of that.
I don't know what you mean by absolute.
Too much for you? The bedrock of actual reality, the foundation, the four corners of actual existence.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. You're just putting in other, I think, mushy words that don't get to the underlying concept you're trying to evoke. The bedrock.
So, are you trying to understand anything here? Please tell me you're not trying.
Just to get back on page here. So, I'm a little concerned that we might get off path here.
Me too.
Streamriff, do you want to say what your connection to absolute truth is to the rest of this conversation, just so I know kind of where you're going here?
Yeah, so if there's an absolute truth, then we can have shared definitions. Right now, Pisco is arguing that there's not a shared definition of Socratic method. I have a definition. I believe it's grounded in the general consensus that nearly everyone uses. However, he refuses to either engage with that or provide
I didn't say that.
Allegiance to that.
So yeah, if I think I could help bring this together. So I believe what Pisco was arguing or saying was he was asking you where you get your view of what the Socratic method is, whether it be a dictionary, whether it be someone else's teachings, like actually from what source you get your definition for what the Socratic method is.
So I wouldn't know where I would find my definition for water under that same context. I will say I use language models now as a tool. I think anybody that's not is lying. And I ask it for right-sized definitions. ChatGPT, the definition was given here, is the Socratic method works by asking a sequence of disciplined probing questions that force someone to articulate assumptions, test internal consistencies, and follow their claims to the logical consequences.
That sounds like, does that sound exactly like what I do?
No, you're out of your fucking mind if you think that. And the mod might be able to help us here.
All right, so Stream, how do you think he does not engage in that?
Okay, so he's not doing it to test assumptions. We'll just start with just that one piece right there. For example, if you ask a yes or no question, and then when there's a yes or no given, keep running, you're not really probing or testing back or pushing anything on it. Think of it as if under a Socratic approach, you're actually asking questions and waiting for the answer. They're discipline questions. Pisco went through long rants about lots of stuff. And I'll say, I love it when people provide context before they ask a question. Gives us context. That's nice. It might even be a great way to argue it's not Socratic. And the underpinning, the through line on Socratic is if someone's asking those probing questions, they're trying to encourage the discussion on the other side, not be pulling the full attention of the discussion.
Okay, so I think whether or not it's Socratic might be relevant to this. What do you think Pisco's purpose is for asking those yes or no questions?
So the cleanest version is it's a prop so that way he can pretend that he's letting the other side speak and he can just keep going on. In application, that's what it ends up doing.
Do you think he's unconcerned with the other person's response to those questions?
Yes.
Really? Okay. And if Pisco,
as evidenced by,
yeah, I do.
I want to hear that.
Give your evidence first. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. As evidenced by, if you gave a shit, one, you wouldn't frame them into these strange binaries that force folks to let you smuggle in baked in presuppositions. If it was Socratic, you'd go step by step and start at water is wet, work them through it. And then two, you don't actually let them speak. Those two hallmarks are the test that you fail at miserably. That's my claim.
So the claim you're just saying is I force people into false dichotomies. First of all, I don't feel that I do that, but oftentimes I will add words like if any or if at all, or I'll say like, do you think that you do the X or Y, or if any of those? So I will often try to make an effort to prevent a false dichotomy, but it's totally, if I do sometimes phrase a question in which it's a false choice or a false dichotomy, the other side can just simply reject the framing and say, oh, I object to the question. The question is a false dichotomy, or it's a compound question, or I can't answer that question yes or no. That question doesn't call for yes or no. And so all of that is perfectly within the capabilities, or what I assume to be the capabilities, maybe not of every interlocutor, but what I assume when I'm treating people like adults, they're capable to do. So I just don't understand what's the problem with asking for yes or no questions when I feel that it's appropriate, so long as I don't force people into dichotomies, either when it's objected to or, I do my best efforts to try to not have a false dichotomy by using terms like if at all or if any.
Well, let's use an example from last night.
Okay.
You said, assuming it was unconstitutional, would you still support it?
Yeah.
I pushed back and I said, I reject your premise. Now, if we were having a discussion and you're trying to understand what the other side thought, which no one says you have to, but since you showed up and you're claiming that's what you want, there's actually some threads to pull on that one. If there was a Socratic environment and that's what you thought you were, you'd actually be engaging in that. You didn't. That's fine.
Except that's
not saying you have to do this.
That's a
the
question.
claim is that you are and you're just not.
So that question, what is the false premise in the question? It's a question.
So you're the fact that you're even pushing back on this is worth taking note.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter, you start off assuming that if it was assuming that it's unconstitutional, which is incoherent, but fine. Hypotheticals are a great way to test things and engage with that.
Wait, it's incoherent.
So,
I just want to make sure I understand. You think it's incoherent?
Just cut me off again.
Wait.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Let me finish that point. Yeah, let me finish that point and then we'll get into the substance of it.
Right. The problem is you're completely controlling the framing, asking very narrow questions, and then as soon as the other person has not even stopped speaking, you just start running at it, going off on your next point. If you're Socratic, you're trying to orient to the person you're interacting with and figure out where they're at and meet them where they're at. That's not what you do. Not even close.
So the first thing I'm trying to address, because you're putting out a lot of claims here, and so I want to respect what you're saying and address all of them. You first state that the question is improper because there's an element of it that is incoherent. I understand incoherent to be something either that like entails a contradiction or that is like you can't understand it, right? Something like that. The question that's what you said, right? Like it's incoherent to assume that an action taken by the president abroad would be unconstitutional against the U.S. Constitution. And I'm asking you, let's deal with that first. One, why or what is your explanation that it's incoherent, by which you mean you can't understand what it would mean for a presidential action taken abroad with respect to military authority to be unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitutional? Go ahead.
But there you smuggled in a definition of incoherent. I'm
what?
thinking.
No, I'm just telling you what I meant. Wait. Stop. Okay. Wait. We're going to stop. Gilmore. I said what I understood incoherent to be. Now, is it fair in your mind, Mr. Moderator, to call that smuggling in?
So I think the phrasing makes it worse, but I think Streamuff, just say your definition of incoherent, and then we could kind of press into that issue.
Yeah. So when I'm saying incoherent, the fact of the matter is that you start off with assume that the moon is made of cheese. Should we have Congress allocate funding to go there? It's such an incoherent presupposition. It doesn't warrant further indulgence other than pure fancy.
What do you mean by incoherent? What do you mean by incoherent?
Let me finish.
You're never going to get to it. You should explain what you mean by coherent.
So it is such an incoherent statement to claim that the President of the United States has done something in foreign policy furthering national interests that it's unconstitutional. It's challenging to engage with. Now, because I'm good faith, I still answered your question when you asked it. But
how could you if it's incoherent? It's
such a strange.
How can you answer an incoherent question? How can you answer? Wait, can I ask a question? How can you answer a question that's incoherent?
Who's stopping you? You obviously have no problem running.
How is it? No. How is it possible?
Here's something interesting happened. Let me
answer an incoherent question.
Let me answer. You just used a definition of incoherent. I offered a different one, and I offered why it was incoherent.
You didn't
under my definition.
Moderator, did he?
You went back moderator, to yours.
Did he offer a definition of incoherent? Yes or no? Sorry.
I think he did, but
what was the definition? What was the definition? What was the definition?
Yes or no, me. I think his definition was that it was so unreasonable that he couldn't imagine it. Basically,
that's so your definition of incoherent is it's so absurd that you can't imagine it.
Was that? I want to rephrase it. Steamer, is that basically what you were saying?
It's so. The example I used was if we assumed the moon was made of cheese. This is the illustrative example. Sure. After I gave the descriptor. The illustrative is that the moon is made of cheese. How much money should Congress allocate to going and grab it? The foundation of it is so nonsensical. It's coherent. When I say it's made of cheese, we know what I mean when I say cheese. Now, maybe Gouda, mozzarella, cheddar, we can be pedantic about that. But it's just the whole premise of it is nonsensical.
Okay, so just to clarify, when you say it was incoherent, it sounds like really what you mean is it's so outlandish or so not in your reality that it's hard to even envision answering the question because the premise is so ridiculous. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. And to clarify, it might be a little bit, it might not have been the perfect word. I don't think it was an unfair criticism of it. And again, Pisco, if you were trying to understand, if you're some Socratic debater, that'd be a great opportunity for you to say, hey, I don't know what, you say that, here's this other thing. And if you're actually going for shared understanding and shared truth, why burn ammo on skirmishes like this?
Is a moon made of cheese coherent? Is a moon made of cheese coherent?
Why are you cutting me off?
Because you're rambling.
How is that rambling?
Stream it. Finish. We'll not get to the meta. Finish your point, and then we'll go on to it.
Well, part of the problem is every time you disrupt like this, it resets, and so that's a part of what's so offensive about it. So we'll try this again.
Sure.
Pisco, you offered a definition for incoherent. I didn't agree with it. I offered another one, And instead of disagreeing with that one or engaging with that one or trying to bridge the two, you just go back to yours and want to fight over the semantics. And again, I think in narrative law, you'd do fantastic. I think in a parallel law, you'd get just destroyed because you're not looking at the structure of the arguments. If you were a good faith Socratic debater, what you would do here is you would try to find some definition we both agree on with incoherent, or, and this is probably the better one, understand that the claim that it was incoherent probably wasn't even hyperbole, even though hyperbole is an accepted rhetorical tool. And so I said, it's such an outlandish thought to begin with. And if I had said outlandish instead of incoherent, perhaps that would have been better word choice. But if every time your opponents use words that are slightly off, you're going to make a federal case out of it, it's challenging to believe you actually want to get to the bottom of anything. Go ahead.
So is it your position or is it not your position that the presidential military strike, it's incoherent to think that it might be unconstitutional? You can just answer it.
Yes.
It is incoherent. And by incoherent, what do you mean?
The framework of the Constitution gives the President of the United States so much broad executive authority. It's nonsensical given that situation, because that's what we were talking about, was in Venezuela, was not constitutional. I was giving you a threshold. When you ask a question like you did and you want an answer, there's some dignity implied by giving you just a clean answer. And so giving you honest feedback, an honest answer is, I think it's such, and in the context of this discussion, I'm going to say I probably should have used the word outlandish. It's such an outlandish presupposition. It's hard to even take it seriously as a hypothetical. That's what I probably should have said.
Sure. So the issue here is, in my understanding at least, if the hypothetical is incoherent, then you're actually not able to answer it because you can't even understand the premise to begin with.
Hence, it's bad.
If it's so outlandish, if it's so outlandish, you could still potentially answer it and say, hey, I can't imagine that happening in the first place, but this is my response. Why? Right. So that's my understanding. Maybe
that's why
see it differently.
This is why it's relevant, right? Because if I were to ask
Pisco,
you...
Pisco, why the fuck didn't you do that last night? When we're having the discussion, you're some great Socratic teacher, and you couldn't just be like, oh, is that the right word? You don't understand? I would have been like, you know what? You're right. It makes sense because I can't answer it. It's so outlandish. That's how that would have gone.
I'm not your fucking babysitter, dude. I'm not your fucking dad. And you're expected to behave like a fucking adult. And when you say incoherent, instead of saying something else, and right now we're having a conversation about whether I'm bad faith, I'm not here to fucking baby you. All right, I'm not your stepdad. So why don't we have the actual conversation right now? The reason why this distinction,
what does the stepdad commentary add to this?
No, all right, guys. Let's again. I understand it's a heated topic, and there is going to be some sort of, not ad hoc, but there's going to be some, divisiveness here. I would love to stay on the topic here.
All right, so
the issue, which we're trying to resolve, is about the incoherent versus outlandish.
And this is why it matters. And I think Gilmore is correct about this. If I were to ask you an outlandish hypothetical, there are good faith reasons to ask outlandish hypotheticals. And in fact, a lot of really good hypotheticals that test the limits of our principles are outlandish fact patterns. If I were to ask you an incoherent question, that actually would be evidence of bad faith. Because if I'm asking you something that's incomprehensible, right? If I say, answer that, and you're like, well, I don't know what you're talking, answer that. That's like an example of bad faith, right? It's an incoherent question. And so that's why it's important for us to, right now, and I'm not going to move from it, cash out what you mean by incoherent. Because if all you mean is outlandish, then it's not an example of bad faith.
The prompt right here includes a claim that you filibuster. This is a great example. Part of the lose scenario for here is you being Pisco, unfortunately. So just like a moth to the flame, you can't resist the urge to drag this out. I don't know how long we've been talking about this for. It sounds fucking retarded. I'll explain. I already gave you, I should have said outlandish, and you're still bitching about it. My counter is, if you were good faith, that's your claim, or at least you're defending that you're good faith. You could have either asked for the clarification or ran with it. If you're going to be so daft about that level of words, then I don't think you're good faith. And then if instead of just taking it, right, like right now you're listening, and I think you're acting fairly good faith right now. I appreciate that. But you give long rants about things that don't matter. That's filibustering. So I'm going to end this point now to the mod. I mean, I'll engage if you still want to keep talking about it.
Well, so this is not an example of bad faith, then, right? Because
all I asked you was outlandish. I'm literally I'm about to fucking be done, and I signal to you, I'm about to be done, and you just can't control it.
Just finish. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. The whole point is, I'm ready to move past this. Outlandish would have been more appropriate. And I think the fact that you don't try to clarify or find the common ground or actually try to connect with and understand means you're bad faith. Go ahead.
But I'm happy to go for it.
Yeah, just a point on that. So I don't think the dispute here is whether or not it was a correct synonym. Right. There's an inherent difference about the term incoherent versus outlandish. You could still answer an outlandish hypothetical, but you can't answer a incoherent hypothetical because you don't understand it. Just like you said, if you're speaking Spanish, you don't understand the question, it's impossible to answer it. So I think that's the holdup here. It's not about synonyms, whether or not it's.
No, I'm happy to grant your usage of the term. And the minute you say, "Oh, what I meant by incoherent is just a ridiculous, outlandish thing to even suppose," and then the I'm going to be like, fine, all right, that's what you mean by incoherent.
I said that like 5-10 minutes ago. No, I already said I should have said outlandish.
Okay, Grant, you should have, because
and I already agreed.
Okay,
that the incoherent is structurally different than outlandish. I'm not hung up. And the mod twice has explained the difference between outlandish and incoherent, and I agree. And I don't know why you're still talking about it.
Okay, Streamer. So the issue though is, do you think it's possible to answer an outlandish hypothetical?
Yes.
Do you think it's bad faith to ask someone an outlandish hypothetical?
No, I do not.
Okay, so this is not an example of any bad faith that I did, correct?
Incorrect.
What? So then,
why is that?
In virtue of what was that a bad faith question?
So I'm going to ask a probing question here. Do you think you were remotely confused? So two-part. Were you confused about what I said? Or two, did you try to clarify so you could actually engage with it?
Confused by what?
So when I said,
I don't know what you're referencing.
When I said that's so incoherent, I can't answer it.
That's not what I got hung up on. I didn't get hung up on that in the debate.
What did you get hung up on?
No, I didn't get hung up on anything when you answered the question. I was like, come on, answer it. And then you eventually did. You're like, it's so incoherent, or it's so whatever you said. I don't even remember if you used the word incoherent.
Right. So
and you answered it. And I didn't get hung up at all. So it just, I didn't get hung up. You answered it, and I accepted your answer. And I was like, that's insane. You're insane. So why was that question bad faith? You answered it. I didn't like dwell on your answer other than to say that guy's insane.
No. So what I don't understand and what is bad faith is I used a word, you disagreed with it. We're all on the same page now about how that was.
No, I didn't get hung up on that word incoherent. Stream Rift. I got your answer is what made me laugh and was ridiculous. Not any particular word you use, but the concept that you were conveying. Right? The concept you were conveying is, even in the situation in which I knew it to be a fact that it was unconstitutional for Trump to take this action, I would still support it. That's what I thought was fucking awful. But I didn't get hung up on word choice there.
Why didn't you engage with that?
What do you mean? I did.
So my version of good faith in discussions is usually, and this is going to sound maybe a little wild, trying to understand other people's perspectives. What really was disappointing about the discussion last night is I actually think you probably have some really interesting commentary you could have made on topics, but you're so busy hung up on all sorts of other shit. You were neither probing anyone else on the panel to really engage and understand. Now, I left after about 2 hours. Maybe it got different when I left. And you didn't even do a good job of explaining where you were. So, for example, you got hung up on the logic chain of, I said, what court should this be heard in? And then you go, well, you think just because it can't enforce it. No, you wouldn't. It was pulling teeth to get you to even give me a tribunal. Then when we got to a tribunal, you wouldn't let Gibbs point out the fact that none of the tribunals you mentioned are unable, literally within their law, to press any charges. And so if they literally don't have a law, there's no tribunal enacted any law that would ever hear this, it can't be illegal because there's not even a court for it. So this is the part we couldn't get to. So if there's no court that would hear it, what should we do about that? And is it moral? It took 90 minutes before we even got to flirting with that. And the host explicitly said, I'd like to talk about the morality of it. So when everyone else on the panel at that point said, that's what we'd like to talk about too, is it not bad faith to derail the entire fucking panel from what everyone else wants to talk about because you want to beat what seems to be a dead horse to death?
Right, so,
even
we'll get to that question.
Are we moving off of the question I asked?
Yeah, so, let me focus on that. Yeah. Keep that in mind, what he said there. So when he asked the question and gave it the yes or no about that, you said the incoherent question, which you now say is just outlandish question. Do you think that question itself was bad faith, or are you saying these later actions is when it twisted over to bad faith?
So I think that the question itself was perfectly fair.
Okay.
That structure of saying, if you think X, just for a second, pretend X isn't true. Let's pretend in that world. That's entirely fair. That's expected, even if we're talking about the bar being a minimum floor.
Sure.
Like a minimum floor is we have to be able to say, well, let's pretend you did like the question. Where it becomes explicitly bad faith and paired with the filibuster is when you don't allow a clarification or engagement with it. And what I didn't bring up Lactoid. When I said that's when you brought up Lactoid as one example where you did engage in good faith, and I gave you that for free. And if that was how we would have engaged the whole night, that would have been awesome. I wouldn't even think you were bad faith. I will say this discussion is making me rethink whether or not you're categorically bad faith. The other thing is also this is 1v1 with a mod. So we're going to be able to be a little bit more gentlemanly with each other.
Yeah, I think so let's deal with, I appreciate what you're saying now. With the conversation that happened, as I understand what you just said, it's not that the question I asked was bad faith, is that I didn't let you elaborate on it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
How did I not let you elaborate on your answer? And to remind the audience, the answer is that yes, you would still be against you'd still be in favor of the action in Venezuela, assuming it to be unconstitutional. How and why what did I do to not let you expand on that answer?
So my takeaway from last night, to be clear, and what I should have done is not ask you questions. And I'll answer directly your question. The problem isn't that you asked a question, it's that you'd ask a question and then you just run over. And so the one-liner is, you're a yapper, so I shouldn't ask you questions. I should just monologue at you with my points until we talk over each other. That's the structure it seems like would work with you, at least the version of you that showed up last night. So I spend a lot of time talking to people. Now, here's a fun fact. About a third of the population's introverts. They need pauses in between exchanges to process and engage with it. So if you actually want to hear what an extrovert or an introvert's thinking, you have to provide pauses. Now, I'm a heavy extrovert. I can overwhelm the introverts most of the time, probably all the time. So what you're doing, it's not the questions that you ask as much as it's essentially, here's the rough format. Maybe you do this subconsciously, whatever. You ask basically a yes, no question, and then ramble more. Yes, no question, ramble more. Not yes, no question, let other side ramble, then ask a question and engage. There's not the rhythm there. That was the problem with it. That's where the filibustering part of the original claim comes in.
But in this specific instance, I thought you said that it was bad faith for me not to let you expand on your answer regarding the outlandish question I asked. And
yeah, you kept talking over literally fucking everyone on the panel. And Wick was being gentle, and I appreciate that. But you were literally, and here's the thing. I hadn't been on a panel with you before. I don't like talking over people. If someone wants to engage in good faith, I expect to not have to raise my voice. And maybe that's a mismatch for the panel.
So is it your claim or is it not your claim that I didn't let you expand on the answer?
Yeah, my claim is you would talk over any response.
Did you try to expand on the answer to that question?
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
And
I think this is a substantive issue that is either right or wrong. So, I mean, unless we have the clips of it, I don't know how we resolve it.
What is there to expand on? You answered a hypothetical, and that was the answer. What additional clarity would you have said if I had let you, as you sit here? What would you have added?
If I had let you, you admit it.
No, on using the assumption that I didn't let you.
You used your language. You didn't say assumption at first. That was a confession, counselor. But assuming, here's the thing.
That's
the
lame.
United States of America. narrative guy doesn't like getting narratived. I get it.
We'll just get to it. Yeah.
To speak to the essence of it, if the Constitution is the founding document of the United States of America, we would say, okay, we're going to learn about how this country's governed and what its legal principles are in the founding documents, which explicitly allow the citizens to overthrow a tyrannical government. And all of those citizens willing to overthrow their own government vote for a president. And all of the powers the president has are enumerated in these documents. And so it is hilarious to me, outlandish even, to presuppose there is something in the interest of national security that would be unconstitutional for POTUS to do. And even if it was, the whole premise of whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional, the nation was founded on rebellion. And so legal is sort of a bit notional at that point. That's what I would have said, and I'm sure you may or may not have had opinions to it. And it wouldn't have even taken that long. The greatest defense about your bad faith is the fact that listening to the other side would, one, probably give you more material to work with, and two, it would just take less effort on your part.
So this is not really part of the prompt. And if you two guys want to do it, do you want to run through this conversation and see if you can work out the issue and have it in a way that you feel is not bad faith?
Oh, like show it? Like show the...
just run through it, like role play the conversation.
Sure. Let's do it.
So Pisco, you want to start with your yes or no question, and then we'll go from there?
Okay.
I'm throwing a yellow flag right now. Just a housekeeping thing. I only have about 10 more minutes right now. Okay. Might be able to stick around a little bit longer. I don't want to stop in the middle and have you like, oh, gotcha, whatever.
No, I appreciate that.
So, let's run it. Go ahead, Pisco.
Okay, Mr. Stream Rifts. I know that you think it's illegal, or it's not illegal, but assume that it were illegal under the Constitution for Trump to take this action. Would you still support, even if it were unconstitutional, these strikes?
Absolutely, and let me tell you why. The entire founding documents of our country are based off of rebellion, and our entire populace supports a commander-in-chief to keep us safe. So whatever the commander-in-chief wants to do is backed by literally every friggin' United States citizen that's willing to grab a rifle, go out their front door, and protect the country as they know it. So I can't even imagine if there was some legal some statute, some whatever, and it was unconstitutional, as long as the chief executive officer of the country is enacting what he's trying to do in the pursuit of, if the actions that are being taken are in pursuit of national interests, it's a high bar to clear that I would give a shit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that most of what you just said there has nothing to do with the question I asked. You're basically arguing why it would be acceptable under the Constitution for the president to do anything he thought was in the national interest. That's how I understood it. But are you saying something different?
Well, so I think both. I think
but that's not the question I asked. That didn't expand your answer there. You're not expanding on your answer. You're just saying why you think it is constitutional, which is an absurd thing.
No,
what you just said. But
even if it was patently unconstitutional, if let's just, to use an extreme example, possibly even an outlandish example. What if we had an amendment, the 18th Amendment, and it said no president can go arrest a illegitimate leader of a sovereign nation and take over a country, or frame that around.
Let's say it names Maduro. Fact. Yeah, there's a new amendment that says the president. It will be unconstitutional for the president to order the arrest of Maduro on this day, and he does it anyway.
Perfect.
Okay, go.
Or this day or any day, even. Okay. If he did it anyway, looking at the entire rest of the legal apparatus, I don't think that's enough to make it actionable in any fashion.
That's the question of whether or not it'll be actionable. You realize that, right?
Sure. So your question is, why would I support it? So why don't you go ahead and repeat the exact question?
Yeah. So you just introduced a new term called actionable, and none of my question or your answer relates to whether or not something is actionable. It relates to whether or not it's constitutional or ethical. These are the two.
When did you say ethical?
Yeah, would you still support it? When I said would you support it, that is a reference to your ethical outlook on it, your normative outlook.
Oh. So when you say would you report it, so to you, if it was unconstitutional, would you support it? Is if it was unlawful, would you think it moral?
Right.
Is that your okay? Right. Aha. So I understand the question better. I would still support it because I believe it was supporting U.S. interests. And I think that there's no injury I'm seeing that's immoral.
Well, most people, I understand that that's what your answer is in terms of why you don't care about the violation of the Constitution there, is because you only care about, so what I'm hearing from you is you only care about constitutional violations where there's like an injury that you care about, right?
No, well, because what we did here is we injected the hypothetical that as a starting point, something that is ambiguous was crossing a black line. We said there's a new law, you can't arrest Maduro, right?
Yeah.
And I let you argue that as the foundation. I said, even if that's what it was, everything else around it says you can still do it. But I wouldn't see it as immoral because laws are not inherently, don't inherently pay allegiance to morality, right? The lazy example is the Holocaust was legal, slavery was legal.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So why should it being unconstitutional? So, for example, in this specific instance, the at least one part of the greater claim is we have a country that cannot take care of its people in terms of it can't prevent them from shipping drugs to the U.S. where Americans are dying, and America doesn't like that. So if there is a rogue nation out there that is incapable of keeping its citizens from causing harm to the U.S., and we've been attempting to use diplomatic channels, why should I be bothered when the president of the United States of America uses military force to protect American citizens? I don't think that's immoral.
Assuming it were unconstitutional. That's the question.
Even if it was unconstitutional,
right. That's what we're examining.
I don't know how it's immoral.
Right. So the reason why I asked the legal question is for most Americans, they value, as a starting assumption, under their ethical framework, the maintenance of the Constitution. Because for whatever reason, either because they think it has inherent value, I don't think that's true, or because they think it has some sort of consequential value, which I do think is true. That is to say, it is the framework by which we, in the long term, will have good results for people and will do more of what we ought to do and less of what we ought not do. So people will have, as a starting assumption, Americans, violations of the Constitution, bad, shouldn't happen. Now, that doesn't mean that every hypothetical violation of the Constitution we would say is something that is bad. I would agree that I can think of violations of the Constitution. Thank you for the raid, Hutch, very much. We're having a conversation about good faith, bad faith, and Venezuela issues. I'm not going to sit here and say that every hypothetical violation of the Constitution is therefore bad under the U.S. Constitution. But most people, when I'm trying to appeal to their ethical systems, will have to be giving them a moral issue of the utmost concern, a civilizational, existential issue, before they would consider saying something like, yeah, it doesn't really matter that you violate the U.S. Constitution here. Something like, the destruction of the Republic itself, something like, nuclear bombs going off, something like some sort of major threat. Yeah.
So I'm not asking you what Daddy Trump thinks or what to agree with Daddy Trump. But Daddy Trump and the administration that authorized all of this and the people that support them, what do you think is their argument for why this would make a lot of sense and why this was a good thing that we should accept and condone? Or maybe not all the way on that.
I'm not sure why that's relevant to the prompt. Can you explain why it's relevant to the prompt? Oh, I'm happy to answer it, but is it? Do you want to move off the prompt?
Right, so you're derailing right now. It seemed like we had derailed. We were...
Well, I think we mean the new prompt, not the filibuster and Gishgallop prompt, because I think we're off of that in trying to roll.
Yeah, I don't think that you've established that at all. That I filibuster or do any of that stuff.
That's kind of besides the point now. Okay. So let's focus on the issue here. Yeah.
So do you want to now have a conversation about Venezuela?
That was the conversation that we had transitioned.
I know that. Okay. So all right.
So yes.
All right. Cool. So I think that they have different stated reasons. And then I think that there's underlying real reasons, and they're multiple.
Could you just give me a giant theme?
Yeah,
just a quick lazy synapse.
Riff, do you want their stated reason, or what you think their actual reason is for it?
Any reason, both would be nice.
Okay,
if they were maybe 1-2 sentences each, not 2 5 minutes each.
So their stated reason relates to law enforcement apprehension. That's their stated legal reason, and that the military action is adjacent to that. The military action, in other words, is use as part of the exercise of law enforcement authority. And so that's their reason is we're arresting him because he is a narco-terrorist who also conspired to possess machine guns. That's their stated reason. Or at least their official reason given. They have other stated reasons, though, beyond that, which relate to, this is Trump and others of surrogates talking about it, ending communism and authoritarianism in Venezuela, in benefiting the Venezuelan people, in extracting oil from Venezuela, and from curbing. Go ahead, sorry.
Do you know what the weirdest thing about sort of the pushback on this to me is that the administration's already seized an oil tanker and has already said we're taking oil. And the biggest criticisms about the Middle East wars was that it was a pretext for oil. Here, I think where Venezuela really messed up is when the U.S. starts targeting publicly and carpet bombing the media with, we've got these drug terrorists that are killing Americans. We're going to have to do something. Oh, everybody grabs their red, white, and blue and says, let's bomb the shit out of them. And if you have an IQ above room temperature and you've been around for more than a couple of decades watching this, you can tell this is what they're posturing for. And so the thing is, they had to sell the morality of this on the American people. And when let me ask you this, when they were doing the...
Wait, do you take issue with what I just said? I don't understand what you just said. Have you taken issue with anything I just said?
Have I taken issue with anything you just said?
Because you phrased that as though it were like a rebuttal to something, and anyone at the room IQ would know this. And so I'm just not understanding. Are you like disagreeing with the things I just said, or do you even remember what I said?
Well, I'm setting up because the question to you was in a couple of sentences, and you went off a bit. And that's fine. That's fine. Far more brief than usual. You said there's the stated reason of, well, we've got he's a terrorist trying to get guns, whatever. Okay. And then you said, and then we're going to fight communism and socialism. And then you said oil.
Help the people and extract oil.
Oh, help the people. Yeah.
That's a stated reason. That's one of the stated reasons.
Yep. And I'm not even pushing back on that.
Okay. So you don't disagree with anything
what I'm saying. No, I don't.
Okay, cool.
I'm running on it because I'm good faith. Usually I try to be. The part of the criticism when Colin Powell went to the UN and said weapons of mass destruction was the American people got sold on the idea we have to go bomb the shit out of the Middle East or else we're all going to die. And I was in high school, 9/11, 2001. And I remember very vividly how the country felt at the time. So when I'm seeing these strikes come out here, I say, we're about to do this. What's strange is they're not even hiding that we want the oil. And so I don't understand what the pushback is on these of like, because it seems like they're not hiding anything about what they're doing. Let me ask you this. Do you think there's some hidden agenda that they're not owning up to?
Yes.
If they're already saying we're there for oil, what is that?
Yeah. So I think one other agenda that they have that they're not stating is a geopolitical one, but it also relates to corruption. And this is what's going on. America is self-sufficient in terms of energy production. It's not like the extraction of the oil, and really it's less about the extraction of the oil so much as the ownership of the oil is done with an eye towards like lowering energy prices. I don't think that's what's going on. And I don't think that Trump has a desire to lower energy prices. I think he's like in bed with these Saudi and Qatari like lords and kingdoms and all that stuff, right? And I think he has a vested interest to from a geopolitical stance, push on China and pressure China. China has a great need for oil. A lot of the exports from Venezuela go to China. And so there's a lot of people in the sort of international room, so to speak, of the Trump administration who want to shift to China. And Biden want to do that a little bit as well. And I think that this is also part of keeping oil prices where they are, having control within a sphere of which includes the Saudis and America, and preventing, Venezuela from lowering prices significantly, things like that. So I think that there is a hidden agenda. It relates to enriching Americans, enriching the oil lords of the Middle East, and curbing China influence.
So thank you for sharing that. And this is how I wish the flow of at least this most recent part here where we've been chatting. I wish this had been more of what we had last night. So I do still have to go. I went a little over. Apologize on that. But Pisco, a few things, if I may. One, thanks for having this chat. It's always nice to actually be able to engage with people. Panel dynamics can be goofy, and Admiral Gibbs will never shut up, and he's got some really strong opinions. So all that to say, I'm glad we could do some one-on-one here. I think we have a better framework of how to communicate with each other. So if we want to do more debates beyond panels, I think we could have a lot more productive discussions. And I stand by my claim that the way that you filibuster and Gishgallop is bad faith, but you haven't been anywhere near that way with me this go of it.
And to be clear, you didn't point to a single example of that in the conversations, the ones that we've gone through. That is to say, the lactoid example, you said that was good faith. You said, so just to be clear, the one about the question, asking the question itself, you said that was fine and not bad faith at all. And then you weren't meaningfully willing to engage on the notion that I prevented you. I just want to finish that I prevented you from elaborating further. No, I just want to be clear. Every single example you gave,
you give monologues, and then so here's what I think it is. I should have just talked over you more, because at least in this chat it's worked better. You give a context, you ask a yes/no question, you get a yes/no answer, and you go. That's the filibuster aspect of it.
I'm summarizing that you fundamentally failed to provide any single example of me Gishgalloping or filibustering for the purpose of whatever. You were off to the races on your 3 examples, whatever. Each one of them, you acknowledge, I guess that's not bad faith. That's just where we're at.
So my third party perspective on this is I don't think we went, it's possible, he was being bad faith. I'm not going one way or the other there. I don't think we got enough into this conversation to even evaluate it one way or the other. I thought it was gonna be a longer conversation. So unfortunately we didn't get to the kind of the merits of it. And then at the end, we kind of had the quote unquote good faith conversation to show that, it's possible to have the conversation in good faith. So I think to justify the prompt, we'd have to have a longer conversation to even get into the merits of it. I don't think it was proven during this conversation,
or disproven, I guess.
Right, one way or the other. I don't think it was.
That's a good faith. You're ending on good faith. Pisco, you just about. I was like, I say all these nice things about him, and then then you throw more good faith. Yes, it wasn't proven or disproven. I hear your position. I think I very clearly have made the claim. You provide context, ask a yes/no question, then talk over the response to it as if you're pretending to hand the mic to somebody. That's the Gishgallop is the rambling, and then the filibuster is not letting. But that's the claim.
If you have 1 minute, I'd like to give my support for my position, which is that that's not true. First, I am myself, and I am the person, and I am the So I want to give my position for why the prompt here is not true. I'm myself. I know my intentions more than anyone else, and I am testifying right now before everybody that I don't have the intent to bog down conversations or to get rid of central points by just going on and on and on things that don't matter. So 1, my testimony, I'm telling you I don't do it. 2, I don't have a reputation for that. I have a reputation oftentimes for other bad things that are like the opposite of it. And 3, you can't point to any single example of me doing that. And I'm willing to spend hours and hours and hours and hours going to central points and open conversations basically to anyone on anything to bring people in to talk those points. And that is the kind of person who isn't afraid of dealing with central issues. In fact, my very presence here to discuss this issue, I think, is evidence of my good faith in the fact that I don't have a tendency to do that. And so all of those things are true. They are, in fact, true. And they show that I don't do that. That's my affirmative case. And so now that I've had the space to do that, I think I have proven that it's not true. So we can know that.
So you're going to be debating Ryan Mullally at World Debate Con, yeah?
It's called Word Debate, not World Debate Con, but yes.
Word Debate. My bad. Look, I'm in Vegas. There's all these cons and debates and warring and hyping each other up. Anyway, Ryan's a cool cat. I thought it was neat that you two would be on that show. So good luck out there.
Appreciate that.
Wait, Streamer, can I ask you one more question just to
fucking mods? Yeah, of course.
It's very quick. So you brought up one thing that I found interesting about, you seem to think that the question that Pisco asked you today about whether or not it was ethical that wasn't what you viewed the question as last night. So what did you think Pisco's question was last night? If not, what was your ethical view of the attack or invasion, however you want to phrase it?
So to me, it's not obvious that supporting something means it's ethical. For example, I think there's any number of internal contradictions humans have. So saying I'd support something is not, to me, identical as saying, is it moral or is it ethical? But it sounds like that was the placeholder for it. And honestly, that's where a lot of the misalignment happened on sort of.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But in that context is the question. Did you think I was saying support, by which we mean like you might support an unethical thing? I agree that that's a coherent notion, that you could support something that you believe is unethical. It's just your official stance. But did you understand me to be asking what your official stance would be, or what you thought would be right when I asked that question?
I did not understand you to be asking an ethical question.
Okay.
I understood you to be asking if I would support it, which to me is a separate question.
Just like what your official stance
would be. This is a part of why, exactly right. What would your stance be, whether you are internally consistent on ethics or not? And that's where the Socratic method comes in handy, because if you probe out, you can find this stuff out, and then But no, that was real eye opener. Mod, do you have any other questions before?
That's all I had. I appreciate that.
Hey,
I appreciate you both.
Thank you,
Have
man.
a good one.
Thank you.